Welcome everyone to my chess channel, where I share exciting and high-quality chess videos. Today, I would like to share with you a thrilling game, a mind-blowing battle between two world-famous masters. Konstantin Dolgitser. Playing white, moving first, and Fabiano Caruana playing black, defending with the queen side. Please enjoy the game! Dolgitser kicks off with his knight jumping to the side, a flexible and calm start to the fight. Caruana answers with his knight as well, signaling that he is ready for battle. Dolgitser pushes his pawn to the center, taking space and raising the tension. Caruana fianchettos his bishop, quietly aiming at the center from afar. Dolgitser strikes with his pawn, challenging Caruana's center head-on. Caruana captures Dolgitser's pawn with his knight. First clash of the game. Dolgitser recaptures with his pawn, keeping the center strong. Caruana develops his other knight, building more pressure on the center. Dolgitser calmly develops his bishop, eyes on Caruana's camp. Caruana castles, tucking his king away safely. Dolgitser lines up his rook on the c-file, preparing for action. Caruana pushes his c-pawn, striking back at the center. Dolgitser trades pawns and opens the c-file. Caruana recaptures with his pawn, keeping the pawn chain connected. Dolgitser develops his bishop again, aiming right at Caruana's queen. Caruana slides his queen to a5 with check, a cheeky poke at the king. Dolgitser blocks with his queen, calmly defusing the check. Caruana trades queens, simplifying the position. Dolgitser recaptures with his knight, staying active in the center. Caruana grabs Dolgitzer's bishop with his bishop, taking the bishop pair. Dolgitser recaptures with his king. No more castling, but the king is safe for now. Caruana brings his rook to the center, eyeing Dolgitzer's pawns. Dolgitser brings his rook to c2, preparing to double on the file. Caruana steps his king closer, heading toward the center. Dolgitser doubles his rooks on the c-file, ramping up the pressure. Caruana shuffles his king again, patient and solid. Dolgitser pushes his a-pawn forward, expanding on the queen side. Caruana moves his rook to bait, guarding the b-file. Dolgitser centralizes his knight, planting it firmly in the middle. Caruana advances his pawn to b6, challenging Dolgitzer's queen side. Rad. Dolgitser pushes his pawn to f3, strengthening the center and limiting Caruana's knight. Caruana pushes his pawn to 5, aiming to create counterplay on the king side. Dolgitser slides his rook up to chicks, invading Caruana's camp and putting real pressure. Caruana pushes his pawn to a5, grabbing space and kicking back Dolgitzer's knight. Dolgitser retreats his knight to e2, staying solid and waiting for the right moment. Caruana advances g5, aggressively pushing pawns toward Dolgitzer's king. Dolgitser calmly steps his king back to d2, keeping everything safe. Caruana goes further with h5. Full steam ahead on the king side. Dolgitser finally trades on f5, breaking open Caruana's pawn chain d-date. Caruana recaptures with his pawn, keeping tension in the center. Dolgitser slides his rook back to c4, shifting toward the king side. Caruana pushes g4, locking the pawn structure and eyeing Dolgitzer's knight. Dolgitser jumps his knight to g3, ready to fight for dark squares. Caruana steps his rook to fight, doubling ideas with his pawn storm. Dolgitser shuffles his rook to a4, perhaps preparing an pawn push. Caruana marches h4 forward, threatening to trap Dolgitzer's knight. Dolgitser dodges with his knight to f1, keeping it safe. Caruana calmly tucks his king to g7, fully connecting the rooks. Dolgitser swings his rook across to a7, entering Caruana's territory. Caruana responds with rf7, defending the 7th rank. Dolgitser doubles rooks on the 7th with ra6, forcing Caruana's king to move. Caruana calmly steps his king to gate, holding his ground. Dolgitser takes on f7 with check, snatching a pawn and keeping the pressure. Caruana recaptures with his rook, staying coordinated. Dolgitser retreats his rook to h2, keeping Caruana's king cut off. Caruana shuffles his king back to d7, staying patient. Dolgitser repeats with ra7, testing if Caruana will blink. Caruana returns king to gate. The dance continues. Dolgitser switches plans and drops his rook back to a6, eyeing the pawns again. Caruana moves rook to f6, getting active along the 6th rank. Dolgitser shuffles his king toward e3, slowly improving his position. Caruana centralizes his rook to g6, pointing at Dolgitzer's pawns. Dolgitser slides his rook over to f5, holding the 5th rank. Caruana pushes g3, creating a dangerous passed pawn and threatening to break through. Dolgitser captures on g3, eliminating the dangerous pawn. Caruana recaptures with pawn, keeping some pressure alive. Dolgitser jumps his knight to d2, heading toward the king side. Caruana checks with rook g3, forcing Dolgitzer's king to move. Dolgitser calmly steps his king to f2, staying coordinated. Caruana checks again with rook g2-2, chasing the king further. Dolgitser runs king to Ione, avoiding perpetual check. Caruana swings rook to Gonu, still harassing the king. Dolgitser hides king on e2, breaking the sequence. Caruana captures rook on g3, finally winning material. Dolgitser recaptures with knight, keeping equality. Caruana pushes b4, starting play on the queen side. Dolgitser plants knight on e4, centralizing it with force. Caruana plays b3, trying to fix Dolgitzer's pawns. Dolgitser counters with kd3, activating his king. Caruana plays b2, forcing Dolgitser to react. Dolgitser takes pawn with kc2, stopping the threat. Caruana activates king to f7, heading to the center. Dolgitser pushes dix, creating a strong passed pawn. Caruana steps king to e6, blocking its advance. Dolgitser improves king to c3, supporting the pawn. Caruana moves bishop to f8, preparing defense. Dolgitser brings bishop to a5, slicing across the board. Caruana retreats bishop to e7, clinging to defense. Dolgitser walks king to b3, eyeing the queenside squares. Caruana moves bishop to d6, holding position. Dolgitser places bishop on c3, locking the structure. Caruana moves king to c8, staying near the queenside. Dolgitser pushes d6 again, his passed pawn racing forward. Caruana blocks with bishop b8, last line of defense. Dolgitser marches king to chix, taking full control. Caruana pushes g5, but it's too late. Dolgitser pushes h6 and Caruana resigns. Victory for Dolgitser. What a masterpiece from Dolgitser. He squeezed Caruana move by move, never rushing, until the position collapsed under pure pressure. Caruana's last pieces fell one by one, and the final pawn push sealed the deal. A beautiful, grinding victory. That's it for today's video. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button to support the channel. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video.